So Kyle dropped a segment over on his Secular Talk channel. It's from his Kyle and Friends podcast that he hosts with fellow co-host Krystal Ball. Now, one of the things that people have been very critical towards Kyle Kulinski over is that he has not criticized Joe Rogan for all of his various misinformation. His stupid politics takes now, it appears he's taken a full right-wing turn. But more specifically, he's gone completely bonkers over the coronavirus, spreading lots of vaccine misinformation and lies. He calls out the media a lot for their COVID misinformation, that Kyle, I mean, but he refuses to say anything about Joe. Now, this video here is titled Sam Harris Blasts Podcasters Pushing COVID Conspiracies. Quote, "It's insane." Krystal Kyle and Friends is obviously already a very popular segment, already having over 20,000 views. I am assuming this will cross at least 80,000, but probably 100,000. Sam Harris is a member of the intellectual dark web, former member actually. He turned in his membership card already, but he is somebody who resents what has been done by people like Joe Rogan and them. Bret Weinstein, he's been beefing with them a lot, calling them out for their COVID misinformation. So I want to play you guys the clip of what Sam Harris says here because I think it's important for understanding who Sam Harris is talking about, because that's really the main question here. And then also, obviously, a little bit of Kyle talking here, because the fans of this channel, the video, actually turned on both of them, and it's going to be for a reason that I'll tell you after you watch the clip.
So there's an opinion that has solidified on the right politically, and it appears at other points on the political spectrum, but it's mostly on the right, I would say, and it's also taken hold out in the alternative media wilderness among podcasters and Substack newsletter writers that much of what has been communicated about COVID by the government and by the mainstream media has amounted to really a hoax, right? And then much of what we've done and demanded that others do in response to COVID has been, therefore, unnecessary and even unethical. And so everything from lockdowns to school closures to mask mandates to the vaccination campaign itself to downplaying the efficacy of ivermectin, right? All of this has been done for sinister political motives and based on corporate greed, right? So what we have now is something, the tens of millions of people, at least, believe that our entire response to COVID, basically everything we've done for the last 18 months or so, has had the ulterior purpose of increasing social control, right? And basically, yes, we've got people, this is the explicit claim one hears from all these quarters now, that the whole purpose of this has been to soften us up for some kind of Orwellian acquiescence to state power. And then with respect to the vaccines in particular, it's also being driven by just the sheer profiteering motive of pharmaceutical companies. Now, there are many specific
Which is odd because, of course, the vaccines are free to the citizenry. But anyway, go on.
Right. Oh, yeah. So we should just unpick all of this. But there are specific policies that one could debate, obviously. I guess at the moment, I think I'm currently uncertain about why kids in schools where all the kids have been vaccinated are still wearing masks. I think you could wonder about the wisdom or necessity of that, and I'd like to talk about that kind of stuff. But it seems to me that this basic idea, which has, again, it's infected, these are not just uneducated rubes who believe this, and I'm not talking about the QAnon cult, although obviously this includes the QAnon cult. But I'm talking about many people who are quite smart, several friends and colleagues who have prominent podcasts, right, have fallen into this paranoid picture of what's going on. And that, there are extreme endpoints of this paranoia. There's the idea that Bill Gates is putting tracking devices into us with the vaccines, right? So there's the crazy end of crazy. But it seems to me that this basic picture, even without the craziest flourishes on it, is more or less insane. The idea that we are dealing with something akin to the Chinese Communist Party here, and that all COVID-related policies have been implemented merely to abridge our freedom politically, that does strike me as patently insane.
So I will say, I think he's, at least in part, talking about Bret Weinstein there, because Bret has gone heavy with the ivermectin stuff, and I don't know to what extent he's downplayed the vaccine, but he's leaned so heavy into the ivermectin stuff that at the very least it's like prioritizing that over talking about the efficacy of the vaccine. And I mean, look,
Now, I had actually done a video about Sam Harris calling out his former intellectual dark web buddies. Specifically, he seemed to be very angry with Bret Weinstein, but also obviously he was very disappointed in Joe Rogan as well. Now, Bret Weinstein went fully down the rabbit hole of being, COVID conspiracy theorist, pushing ivermectin, weird like vaccine efficacy concerns, very bizarre. I personally didn't expect Bret Weinstein to go down that rabbit hole. He definitely seemed weird in terms of being a grifter. He was trying to play the whole I'm the liberal who's criticizing all the liberals bullshit again. The same old bullshit, coin stuff that we've seen over and over again with so many different figures. But I did not expect Bret Weinstein to go down that route. I have to be completely honest with you. So he went completely down the drain. So Kyle says in response to what Sam Harris says there, obviously Sam Harris, he's calling out like right-wing podcasters, podcast hosts, and Substack people and stuff like that. And so he says he's talking about Bret Weinstein. Now, he's obviously talking at least partially about Bret Weinstein. There's no doubt whatsoever that he is talking, at least in partiality, towards Bret Weinstein. He's part of the group, but a lot of the people who are fans of this channel were very angry that they didn't mention Joe Rogan, because it's pretty clear that that's also who Sam Harris is mentioning. So this is a criticism that people have had of both Kyle and Krystal, because especially when you're Kyle Kulinski and you're constantly going after, progressive politicians for not doing certain things, saying that they're spineless. He called Bernie Sanders a cuck because he didn't endorse Ed Markey in his race. And so when you say all this kind of stuff and then you're partial towards your buddies, it's really not that much of a difference. I mean, obviously he's not in a governmental position of power, but it's certainly analogous, no doubt. And you still have a lot of power in that position that Kyle's in. So I think a lot of people are rightfully pissed off. And it's not like Joe Rogan just said some controversial opinion about Snickers or Rainbow Skittles. It's not like he said Rainbow Skittles suck and people got pissed off. He's saying that people shouldn't take the vaccine, and he's questioning coronavirus deadliness. He's saying social distancing is for dorks. He said all those things. So it's not like it's something minor, and it's so much that even Sam Harris had to distance himself from the intellectual dark web to the point where he's, calling them out for their stupid conspiracy theories that they, conveniently make a bunch of money off of. And so, yeah, it's definitely a valid criticism. And so if we do scroll through the comments here, I don't know how many dislikes there are in the video, although I don't think that there's probably really all that many dislikes, because Kyle doesn't usually get many dislikes on his videos, but his comment section seems to be pretty unanimous in saying this. But this one says, Sam, I am talking about Joe Rogan. Kyle, he may be talking about Bret Weinstein. So something I see as a theme in the comment section is that everybody's saying that he's definitely talking about Joe Rogan. But it seems like people are also trying to insinuate, or at least imply, that he's not talking about Bret Weinstein. He's definitely talking about Bret Weinstein. But he's grouping all of them in together. Bret Weinstein, Joe Rogan. I don't know who else he's talking about. But, you get the gist of what Sam Harris is talking about. Those ivermectin douchebags, basically anybody who talks about ivermectin or whatever, it's all grouping them in, and all the COVID conspiracy. Oh, I'm just asking questions about the coronavirus. This one doesn't even imply it. It says he wasn't talking about Bret Weinstein. He was talking about Joe Rogan. So this is false. He's talking about both of them. He's been very, obviously vocal. Again, I did a video about it, about Bret Weinstein, him denouncing Bret Weinstein. So he's definitely talking about Bret Weinstein for sure, but he's also talking about Joe Rogan. But there's a reason why Kyle brought up Bret Weinstein and not Joe Rogan. Okay, there's a reason why that's the case. Says Kyle and Krystal are purposefully not going after Joe Rogan in order to keep the door open to go back on his show. I understand the calculation there, but at the end of the day, it's not honest, and we can all see right through it. So, obviously it's dishonest what they're doing. Obviously, they're sort of like they're censoring their criticism of Joe Rogan because Kyle, I think the guy he looks up to most in life, I think, is Joe Rogan. Probably even more than like Tiger Woods. I think it's Joe Rogan. So you got to keep in mind that's somebody who he really, really loves. And anytime you have a genuine love for someone, you're going to give them more leeway than somebody you either are neutral on, like a little bit, or just straight up dislike already. So I think it's kind of tough for him. I think it more. I don't think he really cares about the views or anything like that of going on Joe Rogan's show. I don't view Kyle as somebody like that. But I think it more has to do with. And he said this openly. He said he has a troubled time criticizing people he has personal relationships with. So he's been pretty clear about that himself. Okay, so that's obviously a very clear thing that we see. And that appears to be the reason why he's not doing this. I don't think he really cares about the views, but I'm sure he loves going on his show. Again, Joe Rogan is the guy who he admires most. That's his favorite person, period. I think over anybody. Kyle and Krystal pretending he's not talking about Joe Rogan is hilarious. That is hilarious indeed. Sam needs to go back on Rogan. It's clear he has issues with his friend. So you can see all of this stuff essentially. Like almost everyone in Joe Rogan's orbit, they refuse to criticize him in any way to stay in Rogan's good graces. Joe's massive audience, endless money, and connections cause anyone who has been a guest or wants to be to refuse to ever criticize or question him. Why won't they acknowledge the obvious that Rogan was one of Sam's main targets? It was very obvious if you listened to the last Sam Harris podcast. He said it clearly without saying his name, but he isn't the only one. So that's absolutely true, right? So is Joe Rogan grouped in with Bret Weinstein and the other COVID truthers? People like Joe Rogan, but will never hear anyone talk anything bad about Joe on Breaking Points. They gargle his balls every day, damn near. So Breaking Points is even more Joe Rogan. But Joe Rogan at this point has like just this huge orbit, kind of like the previous comment said, where he just gets so many views, so people leech off of him. So, posting a video talking about something Joe Rogan said will give you a bunch of views. So they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. The videos that give them 100,000 views or whatever money they're making, they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. Now, whether that applies to Krystal, I think it applies to Krystal and Sagar for sure, like Breaking Point's 100%. The views are huge to them. They need Joe Rogan. Kyle, I don't think he gives a shit about the views. I think it's more just he loves Joe Rogan and he doesn't want to ruin that friendship that he has. And so, look, there's a bunch of these comments. The comments are really, really just... This one says, I would love to see Sam on here and clear the air with Kyle and Krystal. That would be a great episode. I would love to see Sam Harris on the podcast. That would be awesome. But, I could go through and just read all of these comments, talking about Joe Rogan. I think he was talking about Bret Weinstein. No, Kyle, you know exactly who he was talking about. And this is the guy who wants us to trust him because he's only going to tell us the truth and the facts. So I can understand why people would genuinely be pissed that Kyle is doing this because it's dishonest. What Kyle is doing is disingenuous, it's dishonest, and that's unacceptable ultimately. So I understand why people are saying this stuff, especially, again, like I said, given the veracity of the assertions made by Joe Rogan. It's not like he said something bad about Rainbow Skittles. He's out here pushing bullshit about coronavirus, serious stuff. It's not like he said like blue is a shitty color or something like that. It's serious stuff. So it's very understandable. It's obviously very understandable here. But this is what you can see. Let me know what your thoughts are. And I saw a part in the video where Kyle is saying, oh, will people fall into the rabbit hole of Alex Jones? He's like doing this weird thing where he's like equating the COVID conspiracy theorists with someone as fringe as Alex Jones. But people like Bret Weinstein, Joe Rogan, all of these people take part. And it's also kind of like this weird disingenuous grouping thing that he's trying to do that is just very bizarre. So, let me know your thoughts on this down below. Yeah, definitely a lot of people pissed off.